What are you trying to accomplish?
Ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people, realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now.
Is it not possible that maybe people looked and they said, hey, if all the governments, all the institutions, all the schools, all the private companies across all the countries around the world are saying the same thing, maybe it is the case that this vaccine just helps. Is that not possible?
Oh, sure, of course it's possible, but that didn't mean it was right.
Well,
they used force. They used force.
We use force for all sorts of things in terms of public health.
We don't generally use force to invade people's bodies.
I heard a man sat down for the pledge to stand up for his brothers who were killed by the men in the badge.
How long have vaccine mandates been a thing in Canada, the United States, and the entire world?
I don't think they should have been a thing.
That's great if you don't think they should have been, but when you say we don't generally use force, we absolutely use force.
Goes wild, wild.
We absolutely use force. We've enforced vaccines for a long time. It's an important part of public health.
Yes, fair enough. We did it on a scale and at a rate during the COVID pandemic, so-called pandemic, that was unparalleled. And the consequence of that was that we injected billions of people with an experimental. It wasn't a bloody vaccine. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
In this election as it stands is in a tyrant's hands, and now the streets are full of clowns, 'cause the clown is running for the highest job in the land.
Okay, it's a radically transformed form of vaccine. I don't give a damn.
Updates.
That still makes it something so new that the potential danger of its mass administration was highly probable to be at least or more dangerous than the thing that it was supposed to protect against.
Can there be peace for all? Can there be peace for all? Can there be peace for all?
The number of people talking about something is not an indication of the scientific validity of a claim.
I agree with that, but for a vaccine,
then why are you using mass consensus as the determinant of what constitutes
because
truth?
I think for
That's
something,
never been the case.
Because I think for something that was given to billions and billions of people, if this was something that was having a measurable effect on people, it would be impossible to cover it up or ignore it. Well, we wouldn't have to look at the one case brought up on a documentary. To some extent, we have to trust third-party institutions to make determination.
Except when they use force. How about that?
Especially when they use force.
So we call on the wolves, and the wolves come running.
Tell me this then, because the core issue here is use of force as far as I'm concerned. We examined some of the weeds around that. Politicians throughout the world, and this would be true on the conservative side now, in the aftermath of the COVID tyranny, because it was more a tyranny than a pandemic, are now saying that we actually didn't force anybody to take the vaccine. So what do you think of that claim? So let's define force.
I think it's technically true, but I think it's silly.
What do you mean it's technically true? Define
technically
force,
true,
then.
and that in the United States, at least, I think the idea, what they tried to do, they weren't able to do it because the Supreme Court shot it down, was Biden tried to make it so that OSHA, who's the body that regulates job safety, could make it so that employees had to get vaccinated. Now, eventually, or they'd lose their job.
Okay, does that qualify as force?
That's why I said technically.
Yeah, but it's a serious question. I mean, because we need to define what constitutes force before we can. It seems to me.
You could argue it's a type of force, sure. I mean, I think it'd be silly to say it's nothing. Some degree of force, you would undoubtedly believe this, right? Some degree of force is probably necessary for any kind of cohesive society, right?
No, I don't believe that.
Of course there is.
No,
even if you had a tribe of 100, 120 people, if somebody was stealing something, right? You have to punish that person.
I said earlier that becomes complicated when you're dealing with the psychopathic types. Right, so that's a complication.
It
But I
doesn't
would
necessarily
say,
be
generally
but okay.
speaking, that the necessity to use force is a sign of bad policy. And no, I don't think, see, I'm not particularly a Hobbesian. I don't think that the only reason people comport themselves with a certain degree of civility in civilized society is because they're terrified by the fact that the government has a monopoly on force that can be brought against them at any moment. I think that keeps the psychopaths in line to some degree. But I think that most people are enticed into a cooperative relationship, and that formulating the structures that make those relationships possible is a sign of good policy.